I like it because I know one thing for certain is that if you do get married, you must commit yourself to that. Cliff. Richard loved one woman for 50 years. She married his best friend instead, then married someone else, then died in his arms. He never married anyone, never had children, just kept singing while hiding the biggest heartbreak in British music history. When police raided his home in 2014, they weren't the first to destroy him. The BBC had already made a secret deal. The allegations were lies, but the damage was real. He lost weight. He got shingles. He couldn't sleep. He said his own home felt contaminated. The man who once filled Wembley Stadium was now afraid to leave his house. On October 14, 1940, in King George's Hospital, Lucknow, British India, Harry Roger Webb came into a world already shaking under the weight of war and revolution. World War II was raging. Indian independence protests were boiling over. In 1946, riots exploded during Direct Action Day, and British families began fleeing the colony. Among them were the Webbs. Harry's father worked in the colonial system, but by 1948, it was clear the empire was collapsing. So they left, not in a car or a plane, but on a slow, packed ship, crossing the Indian Ocean. The SS Ranchi was their lifeboat. For 3 long weeks, it carried hundreds of British families, all leaving the only home they'd known. They went from servants and sunshine to rationing and gray skies. England was cold and still recovering from the war. The Webbs ended up in a small house in Chorlton, Surrey. Gone were the big rooms and warm evenings. It was a rough start for a boy who had once lived with comfort, but it toughened him. That journey planted something inside him, a need to prove himself, to make something bigger out of this strange new life. And soon Harry Webb disappeared. A man named Harry Grader X was watching closely. He managed talent and had an eye for trends. He told Harry, "You need a name that sounds like rock." Cliff, he suggested. Strong, British, solid, like a cliff face. Then came Richard, a tribute to Little Richard, the wild American rock star. Harry Webb was gone. Cliff Richard was born. He didn't just change his name. He changed British music. On August 29, 1958, a song called Move It came out. It sounded raw, loud, and rebellious. Nothing like the clean, polite pop of the time. Cliff was only 18. The song hit number 2 on the UK charts and set off a shockwave. For the first time, British teenagers had their own rock star. He wasn't copying America. He was creating something new. That one song opened the door for everyone who followed. The Beatles, the Stones, and beyond. But it wasn't just the music. It was the mania. When Cliff went on tour that same year, Britain went mad. Girls screamed, cried, and fainted. Boys hated him for stealing the spotlight. Security guards couldn't hold the crowds back. It was Elvis-level chaos. But this was in London, Manchester, and Leeds. It had never happened here before. They called it Cliff hysteria. The newspapers loved it. So did the record labels. In 1959, the madness doubled. Cliff released Living Doll. He didn't even want to. He thought the song was too soft, too fake. "I hated it," he told his producer. But the band changed it to a slow, country-style ballad. It hit number 1 and stayed there for 6 weeks, selling 770,000 copies. He got a silver disc in November. By January, he had a gold. Then came Travel and Light, another number 1, 5 more weeks on top. Between the two, Cliff sold over 1,000,000 records. No one else in Britain had done that before. Hollywood came calling. In 1959, Cliff appeared in a dark, dramatic film called Serious Charge. It wasn't lighthearted. It dealt with homosexuality, false accusations, and heavy moral questions. Cliff was only 19, and it shocked everyone that he signed on. A year later, he starred in Espresso Bongo, a satirical film that poked fun at the music industry. With these roles, Cliff made it clear he wasn't just a teen idol. He wanted to act, to grow, to be more than a singer. British pop stars had never done that before. Then came Summer Holiday. On January 10th, 1963, the film premiered in London. 3,000 fans flooded Leicester Square. Cliff couldn't even get out of his car. That night, he missed his own premiere, but it didn't matter. The soundtrack hit #1 on the UK albums chart before the film even hit theaters nationwide. It stayed there for 14 straight weeks. Multiple songs from the film reached #1 the next time. Bachelor Boy, Summer Holiday. Even The Shadows' instrumental, Foot Tapper, topped the charts. The movie was the second biggest British box office hit of 1963, just behind From Russia with Love. And in that same year, Cliff was voted the most popular film star in the UK. But then came the Beatles. Most assumed Cliff would be swept aside. Yet in 1964, right in the heart of Beatlemania, Cliff released 6 top 10 hits. The Beatles only managed 5. His songs, like Constantly on the Beach and I Could Easily Fall in Love with You, kept him in the spotlight, even when the Beatles were revolutionizing music and storming America. Cliff was holding his ground at home. The battle was real. His movie, Summer Holiday, and the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night clashed at cinemas across the country. Both broke records, but British audiences hadn't forgotten who had come first. Even Paul McCartney admitted it. He once said that the Beatles left for Hamburg because Cliff had everything sewn up in Britain. And John Lennon said it plainly before Cliff, Richard, and Move It, there was nothing worth listening to in England. In 1965, something truly unexpected happened. New Musical Express held a global readers' poll. Fans were asked to pick the world's top male singer. Cliff beat Elvis. He beat Lennon. He beat McCartney. That year, the Beatles released Help and Rubber Soul. Elvis was still selling out everywhere, but Cliff won. Why? Because even with the world changing around him, Cliff kept evolving. He didn't try to be the Beatles. He didn't chase trends. He balanced pop ballads, faith-friendly films, and genuine charm. He was consistent. And for fans around the world, that mattered. He was their rock before the British invasion and long after it. In June 1966, something happened that no one in the music world saw coming. At Earl's Court, Cliff Richard walked out onto the stage, not to sing, but to stand beside American evangelist Billy Graham and tell thousands of people that he had become a Christian.